I picked two of my favorite cards from my collection, which had mana to your pool, and decided to compare them in order to educate new players and investors and hopefully entertain those who already know about the reserved list and have played with these cards, such as myself. Let's go. First, Savannah. One of the original dual lands, this one taps for either white or green mana. Originally printed in limited edition alpha, I own a revised copy, and that's when it stopped being printed. The Rob Alexander artwork complements the frame quite well, and it's not one of the most popular color combinations, but it's far from cheap. Appreciating some since my last video about the Savannah, and now sits at about $330, actually more depending on where you get it from. Let's see some pros and cons. Pro: reserved list. When Chronicles was released, collectors raged at the reprints, which made their originals lose value. Due to the backlash, Wizards introduced the reserved list, vowing to never reprint a select list of powerful cards from Alpha until Mercadian Masks, when the list came to a halt. This means Savannah is extremely rare and will remain in this status. It's a very, very nice investment for that reason and many other ones. Pro: it's a land. Lands are needed in most decks as they provide mana to cast spells. A land that taps for 2 colors with no drawbacks such as entering tapped or damaging you is non-existent nowadays, and that's where dual lands shine. You can use up to 4 copies of it in sanctioned formats such as Vintage, and it speeds up your game considerably. Great stuff. Pro: very useful. Having 2 colors at once means that your deck will be more reliable. Not only you can choose which color you get, you can have access to spells which use more quantity of a given mana type. The probability that you will be able to cast a colored spell is greatly increased when you have dual lands at your disposal. Con: pricey. An Alpha Underground Sea will set you back to up to 15 grand. A revised one costs 1/5 of that price, but this is one of the most sought after lands ever. As an investment, it is very solid, yet a tad volatile. Dual lands keep soaring, so be ready to spend some serious dough for a playset of any given one, even the Savannah. Con: not a basic. The Savannah counts as both plains and forests, so a spell which affects either will affect the lands. Also, you can't run more than 4 copies in a deck, which is a restriction and does count. Finally, it's a Savannah, so it's not that popular. Con: format restriction. You can't use this in Modern or Standard, but you can use it in Vintage, Commander, Legacy, Old School Magic, Alpha 40, and so on. Because of the reserved list, formats such as Standard will never use an OG dual land. You can play them in quite a few formats, but restrictions apply to other ones. This keeps dual lands in a niche. Now, Mana Crypt. When you bought a Magic novel back in the day, sometimes you could fill in a voucher for promotional cards and send it in. The original Mana Crypt had awesome artwork by Mark Tedin, and it is worth about $300. The Eternal Masters version does exhibit cool artwork, but it's only worth $200. A mystery booster inclusion was also released, as well as a masterpiece one, and this hard-to-find copy costs $900. Recently, the special guest cards of Lost Caverns of Ixalan feature the cards, and the prices are stratospheric. Let's see some pros and cons. Pro: artifacts. Because Mana Crypt is an artifact, it can go in almost any deck where it's legal. Artifact decks benefit the most, especially popular in Vintage. The zero cost means that it's extremely efficient and cheap. Pro: lots of mana. You cast this one for a 0 and immediately add 2 colorless. That's excellent for a mana rock. Even though there's no colored mana involved, this can help cast many a spell. Pro: Value Town. Because not that many copies of the card exist, and it's very powerful, the price of the card has maintained a lot of its value, even with swings. It's the kind of card you hope to pull out of a booster. I've pulled one out of a mystery booster myself, but sold it, having bought a new copy recently. We can say that this one won't get a few reprints ahead, but it's a great one, especially the book promo version. Con: 3 damage. About half of the time, the coin will come up in favor of your opponent. If you don't wait to put this on the board until you need it, Mana Crypt can and will kill you. It depends on the deck being used, but 3 damage is a big drawback. Con: format restriction. It's restricted in Vintage and Legal and Commander, and that's it. Although it can be seen as a staple, you can't play this in Modern, for instance. This won't change, at least I doubt it will, and it's a shame that such a great card can only be used in a couple of formats in a reliable way. Con: reprints. Although you can only play Mana Crypt in a couple of formats, it was a big deal when the first reprint came out 2 decades later. The card is considered to be valuable and rare due to the sets where it was printed and the way it was printed. An example: Mystery Booster, which is a huge set, and Crypt is a mythic. Wizards will reprint cards to the ground, and this could cause some MTG IP to lose value, so it's not an interesting investment, and that's when dual lands and reserve list cards come out ahead. As a final word, I will not pick a winner, instead declaring both cards to be great. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for Magic, Gold and Silver, and collectibles. I appreciate your view. Later.